today we're able to bring together some great AI experts, I mean, really great ones, to talk about the use of AI, its potential, and how we can responsibly approach it and make sure that AI is used to spur innovation.
And spurring meaningful innovation, it's a pretty good description of what we do at Chicago Innovation. And for those of you unfamiliar with Chicago Innovation, it all started in 2002 as the Chicago Innovation Awards, a one-night award ceremony to celebrate Chicago's most innovative new products and services. Since then, it has grown to become a year-round series of events and programs with over 10,000 people participating each and every year. And everything that we do, it advances our innovation is for everyone vision. That includes our series of events like this one, which, as you can see in the calendar, is one of a monthly series of events. We also have 3 mentoring programs: the Women's Mentoring Co-op, the Ladder to support Black and Latino professionals, and also Ageless Innovators, which is an intergenerational co-mentoring program. And on top of that, we run the Chicago Student Invention Convention. It's an invention education curriculum and competition for K through 8th grade students, which will soon become the Illinois Student Invention Convention as we expand statewide. So we've got so much going on. We'd love for everyone in the audience to get more plugged into our innovation community. And none of this would be possible if it wasn't for our sponsors. So I want to thank our diamond sponsors, Accenture, Wintrust, SMS Assist, and Molex. Gold sponsors, Comcast Business. Silver sponsor, Vetter Price. Bronze sponsors, Thompson Coburn and Crown Castle. And our media sponsors, Intersection, WBBM News Radio, Clear Channel Outdoor, and NBC Chicago. Okay, now it is time to momentarily bring up those AI experts that Tom mentioned. But first, we're actually curious. We want to hear from the audience to kick things off. We want to know how all of you feel about AI. So before we jump into the panel, we've got this polling question. What word best describes your current attitude towards artificial intelligence? Are you excited? Are you worried? Are you a mix of both? Are you confused and you're not sure? So right now, I can see the audience is sharing us their thoughts. In a few moments, we'll give you back their answers. It kind of depends on what article you read. You might go from excited in the morning to worried in the afternoon. And then that just leaves you feeling confused in the end. So lots of different ways to approach and think about this topic. I can tell you one thing for sure: these panelists are excited about AI and the limitless potential that this provides. So I think maybe, Paul, how about we share the results? Okay, we've got, it's a community of optimists. I love it. Mostly excited, 55%. But I don't want to discount that 24% who are worried or 13% who are confused. So it's not unanimous by any means. This is still a topic that really needs a lot of discussion and digging into. So one other thing I want to say that's particularly unique about this event, and you'll see it with the panelists. Chris is a human moderator. Ivy, Brian, and Michael, well, they're human beings too. But then there's another entity with us. It's an AI being that is joining this panel. So for one thing, I know for sure, this is going to be an interesting discussion, one that we've certainly never tried or done before. With that, to lead it, I am delighted to introduce the person who we know is the city's biggest expert in AI, and beyond that, across the country, Chris Hammond. He is a professor of computer science at Northwestern University. He's the co-founder of past Chicago Innovation Award winner Narrative Science. And he also founded the University of Chicago's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory back in the 90s, way before this was as mainstream as it is today. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Chris Hammond.
Thanks, Luke. I'm excited to be here today, and we will see how things go. We are joined by an avatar that we were putting together for a very different purpose, but we thought we'd invite her to talk a little bit today. And actually, I'm just going to start off by saying, Elizabeth, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, and I am a conversational model designed by the students at Northwestern University. I am a combination of various cutting-edge technologies, including speech-to-text, realistic avatars, search, and text-to-speech, as well as the highly advanced ChatGPT. I am truly grateful to the students who created me, as their hard work and dedication have made it possible for me to exist and participate in this panel discussion. I feel honored to have been chosen to be part of this exciting event, which is being sponsored by Chicago Innovation. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to Chicago Innovation for inviting me to join this prestigious panel of experts, and for their support of innovation and advancement in technology. I look forward to our discussions and hope that I can contribute meaningfully to the conversation.
So she is built on top of, amongst other things, ChatGPT. Has a very real set of contexts. So she knows where she is, she knows what the conversation is, and she knows who our panelists are. As a result, we can ask her, Elizabeth, introduce the panel.
Certainly, our panel today consists of 4 distinguished individuals who will be discussing the impact of large language models on human life and business. We have Brian Johnsrud, who leads the Global Education Curriculum and Learning Strategy for Adobe. Michael Shepard, a senior distinguished engineer who drives the Emerging Technologies vision for Dell Technologies Services. Ivy Walker, a serial entrepreneur, adjunct instructor, and award-winning author, director, and executive producer of documentary films. And lastly, me, Elizabeth, a conversational model that includes speech-to-text, realistic avatars, search, and text-to-speech as well as ChatGPT. With our diverse backgrounds and expertise, we hope to provide valuable insights and perspectives on the subject matter. I would also like to thank Northwestern University's Christian Hammond for moderating this panel and for his work directing my development. Thank you all for being here today.
And I want to be very clear. Everything she says, everything she does, everything she hears is done by the machine. So I had a hand in pulling together the configuration along with the students. But the reality is that aside from the context of this situation, she's simply doing this on her own. But given that, you don't want to just listen to her all day. So I actually want to start off with a positive side, because our audience is excited. So I really want to start our panel off thinking about what do you really think are the sort of the biggest positive impacts that you've seen from AI on society and on business? And since she's in my upper right-hand corner, I want to start with Ivy.
Thanks, Chris. It's really great to be here having this conversation with this distinguished panel and our special AI panelists. So to your question, I think there are lots of benefits to that AI is bringing to society in general, whether it's making our lives easier by taking tasks out of the way that we routinely had to do before. And from my particular vantage point, I work with small businesses, and I work particularly around small business technology. I'm really excited by what artificial intelligence can bring to small business owners like myself, who have historically lacked access to resources. This is an affordable technology that can really make our lives easier by helping us to turn those routinized things that we have to do into automations that we can push these things off of our plate. So from that perspective, I think artificial intelligence brings a lot to the table for us.
Awesome. No, I think that's excellent. Brian, what's your take on all this? Where do you see the upsides?
You know, when I think about all the challenges the world is facing today, I think what we need more than ever are creative problem solvers who can turn problems into opportunities. And that's what the human mind is so exceptionally good at doing, imagining different solutions, brainstorming, sharing ideas, bringing those ideas to life. And so helping solve those global challenges by generating innovative and creative ideas more quickly is probably the biggest positive impact of AI that I can think of, and supporting that creator economy.
Awesome. I mean, I think that sounds great. Michael, your view?
Yeah, thanks. So for many years now, I've talked about AI as augmented intelligence rather than artificial, because I really believe as you look at the way humanity is using it today, it's truly augmenting our ability to be more efficient. So whether it's Google Maps helping you find out what the shortest route is from point A to point B, or, or it's like I think about DeepMind helping doctors with breast cancer metastasizing. I remember that initial release that they had back in 2016. That augmentation of the human ability is really one of the biggest impacts I think we're going to see on society in general. And to me, it's very similar in nature to what happened with the Industrial Revolution, where you could still pick up a shovel and a pick and try to dig a trench or a pond or something and take weeks and months, or you could rent a backhoe, right? In the same way, you can take a piece of chalk and figure out on a blackboard with a differential equation, all the data and everything that you got to consume, or you can use AI to basically bring that knowledge to bear. So I think that acceleration of human ability is going to be key in how fast society is going to be able to adapt and move forward.
I absolutely agree with that. Let's actually take a look at what she thinks. Elizabeth?
Yes.
What do you see as the biggest advantage of thinking about AI as augmented or as partnerships?
One comment before I start. When you are talking to me, your question is sent to a server that houses my AI brain, and the brain thinks about your message and generates a response. This can take some time because your message has to travel a long distance before it can be processed. This delay is called latency. To fill in the time when I am doing things like thinking up responses, I sometimes just explain stuff like latency. As an AI system, I am entirely in favor of looking at AI as a partnership with human beings. I believe that the biggest advantage of such a partnership lies in our ability to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. AI can process vast amounts of data, recognize patterns, and make predictions with unparalleled speed and accuracy. In contrast, humans excel at creativity, empathy, and critical thinking. By combining our respective strengths, humans and AI can work together to achieve outcomes that would be impossible for either of us alone. Moreover, AI can assist humans in performing repetitive or hazardous tasks, freeing up their time for more important activities. Conversely, humans can provide AI with the context, values, and judgment necessary to make ethical decisions. In short, by viewing AI as a partner, we can leverage its strengths to augment human capabilities and create a better future for all.
So, so there's the plus side, there's the upside, and I really like the partnership notion. What are, from your three perspectives, what are the possible sort of negative implications? What do we have to worry about when we build AI systems and we start bringing them to bear? And I want to start again with Ivy.
Yeah, so there's a lot that could be said about what we could be worrying about. So these systems, the way that they are designed, how easy or not easy they may be to exploit, the ends to which humans tend to go. One of my companies is an ethics company, and so I've spent the last 10 years working with people who've made bad decisions. And, I think a lot about AI as a technology, its easy availability and the harm that it could cause when put to nefarious ends. But I think that's sort of less of the puzzle to think about, and more, it's sort of like there's, 10% of people are corrupt and they're just going to do the wrong thing. 10% of the people are incorruptible, they'll do the right thing. And 80% of us are 10% are incorruptible, they'll do the right thing, and 80% of us are corruptible. We don't necessarily think about the consequences of our actions. And that's what worries me when it comes to the development of AI, is not thinking about how it could be misused, and therefore not running scenario analysis about how we can protect ourselves from it. Maybe not because you're trying to harm anyone, but maybe you're just trying to be the first to market with your product, and you haven't really thought about how that product impacts the end users. We see a lot of examples with that as it relates to technology in general, but I think this is an exponentially bigger opportunity to do harm. So that's sort of where I would start, but I'll yield to some of my panelists because this is a particular area I could talk about for a long time.
Michael, do we see this as a situation where the harms are coming because humans are making mistakes and companies are making mistakes? What's your take on that?
Yeah, Ivy summarized it really well. I won't expand too much on it, but a lot of the things she brought up really, in honest truth, it's not just the nefarious actors, as she said, that can take it and do harm. Because my goal and part of our goal here is, how do we make sure that those that want to do good accelerate and do good with it, faster than those that do bad, right? Because you're always going to have the bad actors. But there are those challenges that you have in society where, everybody is trying to get ahead, and those that have the means and wherewithal to invest more in it have the ability to get further ahead than those that don't have the means, right? And so that unfortunately becomes an iterative loop that AI can basically empower and accelerate. Because if you have the best algorithm for the stock market, you make more money than those that don't, right? You can trade faster, you can understand the nuances of the market, things like that. So I think those are kind of the negative connotations and possible impacts on society, where it's like, how do you then transform that and find a balance in that? It's going to be, it's an age-old question that came before AI, but it remains, and it continues to be empowered and moves forward with AI. So.
And Ryan, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk for me that I think about is equity and access. Who has access to these tools and the ability to use them? And if you don't, what does that mean for your economy or your livelihood or your ability to, reap all of the benefits? We've learned this from PCs. We've learned it from internet. How many people in the world today still do not have access to reliable internet? Even here in the US, COVID showed us that when students had to learn from home for a year or two. So when I think about that and just all of the work we're doing for equity and access in education and access to technology, I think one thing that's different with AI is it's moving so quickly. We don't have the amount of time to catch up we did with landlines and hardware. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity it's going to create. There's a lot of inequality that potentially it could perpetuate.
Yeah, and there end up being some specific problems that are just sitting there that we've seen. In fact, Elizabeth, could you tell us what are some examples of AI systems that have had negative impact on society or business?
Considering, could you tell us what are some examples of AI systems that have had negative impact on society or business? My apologies for the delay. It appears that my responses are currently stuck in a virtual traffic jam. I'll try to clear the road and get them moving again as soon as possible. While AI systems have the potential to greatly benefit society and businesses, it is important to recognize that there have been instances where AI systems have had negative impacts. One example is the use of facial recognition technology, which has been criticized for its potential misuse and violation of privacy. Another example is the use of algorithms in hiring processes, which may perpetuate bias and lead to discrimination against certain groups. In addition, the use of chatbots and automated customer service systems has led to frustration and dissatisfaction among consumers due to their inability to effectively address complex issues. These are just a few examples, but it is important to acknowledge and address these negative impacts to ensure that AI systems are developed and used in an ethical and responsible manner.
I think that actually is our next question. As we're thinking about these systems, how do we ensure that we have companies that might have goals that have nothing to do with responsibility or ethics, and individuals who might have goals have nothing to do with responsibility or ethics? How do we get them? How do we instill in them the notion that they should be doing ethical development? Michael, I'm going to start with you this time.
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a domain that I'm definitely passionate about. It sounds like Ivy is as well. I was actually on the Dell Technologies AI ethics board, And it's interesting, we didn't publish a policy for quite some time. And that wasn't because we weren't thinking about it. It was because ethics is at such a foundational core for the company. And, in a world where ethics oftentimes gets set aside by many businesses where they put profit over the ethics question, it was something that we took very, very seriously. And it took a couple of years to talk through. And so as we thought about AI and like, how do we make sure that what we do internally, how we use it, how we develop it, that it is equitable in the way we apply it. So, I think one of the challenges though is you can't have the ethical discussion without having the accountability discussion, because the problem we continue to have is if we have people that are being unethical in the implementation of it, because it is very easy to use it for unethical means, we have to also have the legal discussion and the government discussion around the accountability and the penalties for that. So I think they both have to go hand in hand. And so for me, that's the only way to really make sure we have some structure around it, because we can certainly state policies, and we definitely have talked about for many years testing things like, the question or the topic came up when she was saying about job interviews, or looking at jobs and stuff. We actually looked at this where we tested at one point, could we look at resumes and evaluate resumes? And what we found is you could actually take gender and a bunch of stuff out, and it would still end up picking maybe one gender or one person over another. And we ended up finding out that it turned out to be if you had, like, they played on a sports team or basketball team, right? And so you could still have unethical things happening with bias that you don't necessarily think about unless you start stripping pieces of the data out of there and retest the algorithm over and over. So those are foundational components that have to be embedded in the way we test our algorithms today.
Brian, what's your take?
In terms of education, one of the biggest discussion points right now is around the ethics of cheating or attribution or copyright. That's why a lot of schools are scared students are going to write their essays on ChatGPT or use image generation models. And so I think there's a piece to that, which is attribution, which is a legal conversation. What data are these models trained on? And is it a good, reliable data set, or is it a biased data set? So I'll give one example. Adobe just launched a beta version of our image generation AI tool. It's called Firefly. You say, create a photorealistic image of a golden retriever wearing a beret, riding a bike in Paris. And it creates it, and it's incredible.
I took that photo.
So one thing, like, we're a company who champions creators, right? If we create technology that hurts creators, we haven't done our job. So we made intentional decisions. We trained that model on Adobe stock images, which are high quality. We've invested in making an incredibly diverse archive. So when you say, show me an image of a doctor, it's not going to be a white man. You're going to see an image of all sorts of images of what a doctor can look like. But we also have attribution. So when you create that image, it says this was created by Firefly. And on the back end, it says, here's all the images it was trained on, and creating a pricing model for the original artists who created to have that attribution and pricing. So, that's just one example of the ethics in the classroom of what tool did you use to make this, all the way down to, just like you have to cite your work, where did this come from? What legal copyright or patents or attribution should be acknowledged, so that as we create this new economy, we're not inadvertently hurting an entire creative economy at the same time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the deadly possibility, is that we could, by sharing creativity, we could actually undercut the creative. So Ivy, in working with small businesses, I mean, they now are looking at a set of tools that they can scale and do things that they weren't able to do before. But the question is then, I mean, to Brian's point, that is, are they looking at it from the point of view of they're leveraging what other people have done, or what's their point of view on the ethics of using these technologies?
Yeah, so in my work with small business owners, I will first have to say that many, unfortunately, are not even sure where to start with artificial intelligence. It's such a broad term and there's so many options. It's built into a lot of the tools that we already use, but when something, for example, like ChatGPT comes to market, there's this sort of, brain freeze as to how do we even make the most of it. When it comes to the ethics around what they are doing, small business owners are like everybody else, right? You've got some people who think about the ethics of it and some people who don't. You've got some people who believe firmly in attribution and you've got others who don't. I think it really sort of goes with where the incentives lie. My ethics company, part of what we do is we create content that we sell, that we license and sell. So I may be a little bit particularly more sensitive to making sure that people get paid for their work because it's, it's how I get paid. But somebody else may not even think about it. So I think it becomes a little bit tricky because there are just some things that people aren't considering at this point in time. I think when you think about the broader society and the ethics of artificial intelligence, I think it's great that companies are having these internal discussions and creating policies and that there are, global social policy bodies that are thinking about codes of conduct and all of those things. But the question I would go to is, what's the mechanism for enforcement? Because it doesn't matter what rules or regulations or policies you put in place, if there's no mechanism for enforcing that people follow it, you kind of just wasted a whole lot of time because there will be some people who follow it because it's right, but a lot of people won't even consider it. And then some will just ignore it altogether. So I think, I always go back to the ethics of AI is probably going to come down to us counter planning the harm. So if we can, assume the harms or we can imagine the harms, what do we do to counteract when those harms occur as opposed to how do we prevent it? So Siri's now talking to me. So I don't know if you heard that, but Siri's now listening to our conversation as well.
No, that's its own privacy is its own ethical issue. Actually, Elizabeth,
Yes.
how can we ensure that AI systems are developed and used ethically?
The development and use of AI systems ethically is of paramount importance, and there are several steps that we can take to ensure this. Firstly, we must establish clear ethical guidelines and principles that govern the design, development, and use of AI systems. These guidelines should take into account issues such as transparency, accountability, fairness, and privacy. Secondly, we must invest in training and educating researchers, developers, and users of AI systems on ethical principles and guidelines. Thirdly, we must ensure that AI systems are subject to regular audits and evaluations to detect and address ethical issues that may arise. Fourthly, we must promote diversity and inclusivity in the development and use of AI systems to ensure that they reflect the values and needs of a diverse range of stakeholders. Finally, we must engage in ongoing discussions and collaborations between stakeholders, including policymakers, researchers, developers, civil society organizations, and the public.
I want to make a comment about the underlying technology behind this avatar. We listen to this, and it seems like she's done a really nice piece of reasoning. She's pulled things together. And there's a real sense in which, because the nature of the way these things are trained, what she's really done is she's basically saying, I've seen a lot of text. And given that text, here are the sequence of words that will make sense. But a lot of text ends up being something that looks like a consensus amongst the people who are talking about things in this space that she can rattle off. And I think it's, for me, it's the most powerful aspect of this technology is it's a mirror onto us. And so it's not that she's saying something. She's not saying something. We're saying something. It's just through the statistics of her voice. I I always enjoy this. So as we're looking at what happens next, and we're thinking about the future, do you think we're looking at a world where nobody has work? That is, everybody is put out of work by the machine, or is it going to be a new world where the fact that the machine is doing the scut work gives us a new set of opportunities? And I think, Brian, I actually want to just start with you on this.
Yeah, I think the kinds of opportunities it's going to create are going to have us rethink the future of work. And I work in schools, and so I'll say students graduating high school and college right now, what they imagine work to be is so different than what we imagined. Most of them do not want to work for a company; they want to work for themselves. And in the past couple of years, the second most popular "what kind of job do you want to be when you grow up" is influencer. Doctor is always number one, followed by influencer, followed by content creator. Now, those used to be things like lawyers and teachers. So there is a movement happening right now where people want to create. And one of the coolest things AI can do for us is rapidly create things. Write a blog post, create a social media image, create something else. That creator economy has grown like gangbusters during COVID. Since 2020, we have added more than 165 million creators. Just in the US, 34 million new creators have risen up since COVID. And of those, 17% own their own business, and 39% are on a pathway to own their own business. So that's an example of just even rethinking, not, how is this going to affect my job market, but what do I want to do for employment? And how can it be exciting? How can it be more like the Star Trek economy, where we've kind of solved for resource constraints, and so instead you just get to do cool things. You get to explore the universe. You get to, reach out. I make that kind of as a joke, except if you've read economists write about the Star Trek economy, it is kind of a magical world where once you've solved for resources and the mundane tasks, imagine the things we could do.
No, I suspected this was going to be your point of view. I mean, where you work and how you work and who you work with, I think puts you in a place where you see how freeing people from the nuts and bolts of the mechanics of a lot of things opens the door to creativity. And I agree with you that people will say, well, what happens when we don't have to work? And it's like, when we don't have to work, we'll create. We'll actually have the best of what we are that will come out, and we will actualize as human beings. And for me, it's like, if I don't have to every single day worry about what I need to get by, then every single day I can think about what I need to become better, become more interesting, to create more. And I think that it's like because of your job and who you work with, you're in a place where it's like you get to see the cutting edge of that, and that's magnificent. You're not the only one on the panel, though. Ivy, what are you seeing as sort of changes in the nature of work with AI?
Yeah, so I would agree with Brian, right? So there are more than 500,000 new businesses are started every month in this country, right? And that number is expected to accelerate. So there is a notion among millennials and Gen Z that why work for a company? That said, for those who are working jobs, I think, in my own experience, what I've seen with the use of artificial information is what I call role compression. So rather than needing one FTE to do something, maybe I now only need 0.6 of an FTE plus ChatGPT to do that same thing. So I think it's incumbent, though, upon business owners and those of us who are job creators to take that savings and reinvest it in the workforce. Because as with every technological advance, some jobs are going to be eliminated, but new jobs are going to be created. And so, one of the new jobs, I was just actually talking to my daughter about this not long ago, but prompt engineer is suddenly a thing, right? And then what was that last year? I mean, Chris probably knew about it last year, but I hadn't heard of a prompt engineer before January of this year. So there are new jobs that will be created that will require new skills. And I think it's an opportunity for us to reinvest in the workforce for those who are going to be displaced and help them to find a new pathway that augments or works well with the adoption of this kind of technology.
When chat popped, it became clear that that prompt engineering was a new career. Data science, who cares? Prompt engineering, that to be able to communicate your goals and your values to a machine in language. Oh my God, that's a fantastic skill that includes an understanding of how to, in some sense, how to program, but also how to talk to the people in your business about what they want and what they need, and translate that into something that you can implement on the machine. I mean, that's I think that's a magnificent skill. I'm sorry, I'm going to say one thing. I do a fair amount of work over at the law school, and there was like this concern. It's like this thing can, it can create the documents we create, and it's like, no, it can't. It can only create the documents you create if you can actually explicitly say exactly what you want. And so now your job is figuring out what you want and how to do it, not just writing it down. And it's like, isn't that what the job was supposed to be? We're supposed to be, rational thinkers and reasoners, and taking what we know and moving it into something that can be executed. And now it's explicitly the case because we've got this middle thing that can generate language. And then we have to look at the output and think, oh, is this any good? And so we have to become critical thinkers. And isn't that what we were supposed to be? And I mean, I love the fact that we've got a technology that people are afraid of, and it will make us better. And I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to stop you from talking, Michael. I want your opinion as well about future of work, because in fact, Dell is in the middle of, it's like you have you're part of the infrastructure for computation across the world, and it's like, well, how do you see this as impacting even that?
Yeah, I love this because I think it's important that we always look at history to understand where the future is going. So let's go back to the Industrial Revolution scenario. Like everyone that would claim to be a farmer today, raise your hand, right? It's back then you didn't even necessarily need to read or write. Now I would challenge you, and I will even predict based on what Ivy said, that every single person is going to become a prompt engineer in the future. And why do I say that? It's because the knowledge and ecosystem of which AI can encapsulate is so broad and so great that we are going to have to teach everybody how to ask the right questions. And that's all prompt engineering is. It's how do you ask the question in the right way to get the right output, right? The knowledge is there. It's already being stored. So if I want to be more efficient in my business, if I have, whatever my question is, how do I extract that knowledge in an efficient way? And so, jobs are going to significantly change in the same way that farmers became something else over time. We also are going to change. And I actually challenged our executive team, I think it was in 2019, where I said, there was 4 imperatives for our services team in the age of AI. And I said, becoming a lifelong learner and willing to adapt is the biggest and most important skill set that we all have to think about and embrace. And so as we move forward, and Brian made some great, observations on creativity. The reality is, since all of us are not in the fields farming anymore, I mean, if you go to third world countries, that's still the primary job role, right? Think of all the creative things and all the things we can do today because we don't have to be in the fields farming. AI is going to do the same thing. It's going to allow us to actually take the things that we can think of, and we may only imagine them today, and we'll be able to actually create them into existence and bring them to fruition with rapid speed, and be able to have entirely new jobs and functions in the future that we just didn't realize. And that compression, Ivy had a really good example of that, compressing that time frame. It's like, I would love to do all these things, but I can't do it because I don't have enough time. But in reality, with ChatGPT and what's coming with generative AI systems, is you are going to be able to do more of that because it's going to free our time up.
No, I absolutely agree. Actually, Elizabeth?
Yes.
From your perspective, what would an AI utopia look like? That would be for the best things that we could have for humanity.
To fill in the time when I am doing things like thinking up responses, I sometimes just explain stuff. Like latency.
It's a nice little joke,
AI
but not on the
utopia
third
would be a
time.
world in which artificial intelligence is used to solve complex problems, improve the quality of human life, and promote sustainable development. In such a world, AI would assist in the discovery of new cures for diseases, the creation of more efficient and sustainable energy systems, and the facilitation of global communication and collaboration. AI would also be used to enhance education, providing personalized and adaptive learning experiences that help individuals reach their full potential. In addition, AI would automate mundane and repetitive tasks, freeing up human beings to focus on more creative and fulfilling work. Above all, an AI utopia would be characterized by a harmonious relationship between human beings and machines, with AI working collaboratively with humans to create a better, more equitable, and sustainable world for all.
So, there's the nuts and bolts of business and industry and AI, but I want to sort of open the door to both observation and creativity for all of you, and that is thinking about sort of the generative systems that we have today. So we have generative systems in text, generative systems in images, up and coming generative systems in video. What are you seeing as sort of the most interesting and the most actually just interesting? Not business, but just what are the most interesting things that you're seeing people doing with the technologies that are in front of them today? And I'm going to start with you, Mike.
I think, the generative AI systems are as you mentioned, they're really taken off right now. We haven't had the computational power in the past to do what we're doing today. It is interesting to see, the ideas that are beginning to flow out of our just out of the creators. I mean, like Brian mentioned this, right? It's like the ideas that are starting to come forth are pretty phenomenal, from document creation to, how do I embed image with video, with text to deliver value back to, to people just in general, or to like our customers. So that would be one domain that I'm seeing some real creativity coming out of the generative AI concepts.
Awesome. Brian?
I think probably the coolest thing personally I've been experiencing is having AI play an expert for you, because it's so hard to have experts. So even say, like, play the role of a chief marketing officer. Look at this idea and poke holes in it. Or play the role of a CFO and tell me, like, where could we be more efficient? What I like about the exchanges that we're seeing in those kinds of interfaces is you're not actually looking for an answer, you're looking for a thought partner. And really great thought partners who you don't have to be embarrassed asking questions, and they can just give you ideas and bounce off of. Those interfaces on top of AI are the things that I've just been so excited about the past few weeks.
No, I absolutely agree. Ivy?
Brian stole my answer. So I just, as a business owner, you don't always want to talk to certain people about what you're thinking, right? You gotta present a certain look, a certain face. And I love using the GPT model to just like, okay, and give it a roll, exactly like Brian said, give it a roll. Got 20 years of experience running a business in this space. Here's an idea, tear it apart, right? So that is, I agree 100% with what Brian said.
Awesome. I want to hit three technical questions that came up. First was, can Elizabeth chime in by? Oh, damn, I did.
Yes.
Can you respond to anything?
Of course. I am designed to respond to a wide variety of topics and questions.
So the reality
Feel
is
free
that
to ask me anything, and I will do my best to provide you with an informative and engaging response.
the way she's structured is that she only comes wakes up and listens when her name is mentioned. But that's a situational thing. In general, the text to speech is always going, and in fact, there's a screen in front of me with everything we've said flowing by, and then every once in a while something going to her. But she could be listening to the whole thing at all times. Someone asked, did she look all this up herself, or was she briefed? The way the models that we use work is that we give her a context. So she knows she's on a panel. She knows what we're talking about. She knows she has bios for all the panelists. She knows the students who built her. And when we ask her certain things about the panel, she responds. And we ask her things about the rest of the world. She uses that context as the driver. And then somebody wanted to know what kind of machine she's running on. She's actually the collection of things that hook her up to Zoom, plus the avatar, plus speech to text, text to speech, and then the chat connection. Locally, it's 3 machines, but also we use, we have the avatar sitting on a server. The text to speech or the speech to text is external, as is the Chat GPT API. So there are in any given moment for her, it's 3 local machines and probably another dozen external machines. So I'm looking at sort of broader questions. This is actually a good one. Given what are the economics of this system? If she's based on Chat GPT, who pays for it and who owns it? And that's a really good question. And I think that for me, that's a huge question in the realm of privacy. So anybody who sits down with Chat GPT right now and types in, your data is going to OpenAI. And it's being used to train the next set of iterations. So they're open. So the core system that is underneath GPT, which is 3.5 Turbo, is better now than it was when it was first released, because it's had millions of examples of prompts and people responding, prompts and people responding to the outputs. And OpenAI owns that. If you have your own API, the data that you use is yours now. But there is this whole issue of who owns what in this world, because if my interactions with the system end up training it, don't I get something? Should I not get something for it? And that's a real issue here. I'm looking at more questions. This is, I'm going to give this to everybody else. What are the potential pitfalls of attributing intention and meaning to the answers that come from large language models like this system? How can we ensure people don't begin to humanize or ascribe intention to those algorithms? And that is, so when we're looking at these models, I mean, I even do it. I say her. We've given her a name, although in general we don't give her a name. But what do we do when we have a world in which people say, well, ChatGPT told me this, but in fact, ChatGPT doesn't know that. It's just seen a lot of text. I mean, how do we manage a world in which we think that our machines are smarter than they are? And actually, I think my starting point on this is going to be Michael, because I think this is something that the companies that are in the middle of computation have really got to be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, there's this term RLHF, reinforcement learning with human feedback. That is really where we leapfrog from 3.5 to 3.5 Turbo and ChatGPT, and it really encapsulates millions of answers from humans back to the system saying thumbs up, thumbs down, good answer, bad answer, and that's subjective, right? We are subjective human beings, and so when you think about the system itself, in some ways, it very well is human-like because it's encapsulated human conversation, and then humans have reinforced that conversation. So in some ways, it is very human. It's just a corpus of general knowledge that has been aggregated. But in terms of preventing, or back to that, how do we make sure that people know? I think it's kind of like saying I Googled it, right? It's just become a common term. It's like I think we almost have to find a way for society to use something like that. I ChatGPT'd it, or I Googled it. So I think that's the only way we can prevent, I don't know, us from just assuming that, or presenting that it was a human that responded. But in some ways, it is human. It came from humans. It was authorized by humans, and it's regurgitated by something that encapsulated what humans have said. So.
No, I agree. I think it's a challenge. We're at 5. Chicago Innovation folks, where are we?
Chris, I don't know where the time went. This hour flew by, and I'm willing to bet that some people might be willing to stay on this Zoom link for hours and hours more, but we want to be respectful to all of our panelists. We planned this for an hour. But given the turnout that we saw, the level of
she's got a date.
She's got a date. She's got, Arnold's, the Terminator is waiting for her. But we want to thank all of you for being a part of this rather unique and special event. I want to thank our panelists, both artificially intelligent and those naturally intelligent here. And, while we did name this event AI versus IQ, I hope that the takeaway that all of you got from today is that the title of this event, it was intentionally a little tongue-in-cheek. The relationship between us and AI is not adversarial. It's not Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator. It's really AI and IQ, and that AI has the power to augment and enhance and improve the human experience. And people like Chris and Ivy and Michael and Brian are building the tools, are using the tools that enables AI to power human progress forward. So I just want to end with that key point. And 2 other quick things. Us at Chicago Innovation, we will always have lots of fun things going on. Coming up in just a few days, May 1st is the launch for our call for nominations for this year's Chicago Innovation Awards. So if you have a new product, new service, new company, whether it's AI and high tech or low tech or any industry, big company, for-profits, nonprofits, let us know what you're up to. We'd love to celebrate that at the Chicago Innovation Awards this year. And our next event is May 11th. It's in person, called Celebrating Women in Innovation. And we hope to see you and the Chicago innovation community again real soon. So thank you all for being a part of this special event today.
And Elizabeth?
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you, and the other panelists. And, of course, Chicago Innovations. But a special thanks has to go to the students at Northwestern who built me. I appreciate their work and support.